Victoria Sterling stepped out of her shiny black car and looked up at the tall building in front of her. The Harmony Music Academy was written in gold letters above the main door. She smiled and checked her diamond watch. She was right on time for the charity event. Victoria was 42 years old and very rich. Her husband owned 3 big companies, and she spent most of her time shopping and going to fancy parties. Tonight she wore a white dress that cost more than most people made in a year. Her high heels clicked loudly on the stone steps as she walked up to the building. The charity event was to raise money for poor children who wanted to learn music. Victoria did not really care about the cause, but all her rich friends would be there. She needed to be seen at these events to keep her place in high society. As she reached the top of the steps, she saw a man standing by the door. He was checking people's names on a list and letting them inside. The man was about 50 years old with gray hair and kind eyes. His clothes were old and had small holes in them. His shoes were worn out and needed to be replaced. This was Marcus Chen, though Victoria did not know his name. Marcus worked as a gatekeeper at the academy during events like this. He also cleaned the building at night to earn extra money. He had been working there for 5 years, always polite and helpful to everyone who came through the doors. Victoria walked up to Marcus with a big smile on her face. She was used to poor people treating her with great respect because of her money. "Good evening," she said in a loud voice. "I am Victoria Sterling. I should be on your list." Marcus looked down at his paper and found her name. "Yes, Mrs. Sterling. Welcome to the Harmony Music Academy. Please go inside and enjoy the evening." Victoria looked at Marcus more closely. She saw his old clothes and tired face. She felt sorry for him, but not in a kind way. She felt sorry for him the way rich people sometimes do, like he was a sad animal at the zoo. "You poor thing," she said, shaking her head. "You must work so hard for so little money. Do you have any talents? Can you do anything special?" Marcus was surprised by her question. Most rich people just walked past him without saying much. I try to do my job well," he said quietly. Victoria laughed. No, I mean real talents like music or art. This is a music school after all. Can you play any instruments?" Marcus hesitated. He did not like to talk about his past. "I used to play piano," he said softly. "Piano." Victoria clapped her hands. "Together." "How wonderful. I play piano too, you know. I have been taking lessons for 10 years. I have a beautiful grand piano in my living room that cost $50,000. She looked at Marcus again, taking in his poor appearance. An idea came to her mind, a cruel idea that she thought was funny. "You know what?" she said, her voice getting louder. "I bet you have never touched a real piano. I bet you could not even play a single note properly." Other people were starting to gather around them. They heard Victoria's loud voice and wanted to see what was happening. Soon, a small crowd formed on the steps of the academy. Victoria loved having an audience. She felt powerful and important with everyone watching her. "I tell you what," she continued, her voice full of confidence. "If you can play just one note, just one single note on the piano inside, I will write you a check for $10,000 right here, right now." The crowd gasped. $10,000 was a lot of money. Some people started whispering to each other. A few took out their phones to record what was happening. Victoria felt very pleased with herself. She was sure that Marcus had never really played piano. Poor people like him did not have access to real instruments. Maybe he had touched some old, broken keyboard somewhere, but nothing like the expensive grand piano inside the academy. Marcus stood very still. He looked at Victoria, then at the crowd around them. Everyone was staring at him, waiting to see what he would do. Some people were smiling like they were about to watch a funny show. Others looked uncomfortable like they knew something was wrong with what Victoria was doing. $10,000? Marcus asked quietly. $10,000, Victoria repeated, loudly. "But you have to play it perfectly. One wrong note and you get nothing. Not that I am worried about losing my money." She opened her expensive purse and took out her checkbook. She waved it in the air for everyone to see. "I will write the check right here if you can do it. But we both know that will never happen." Marcus thought about $10,000. That was more money than he made in 6 months of working at the academy. He could pay his rent for a whole year. He could buy his sister the medicine she needed. He could fix his old car that barely worked anymore. But it was not really about the money. It was about the way Victoria was treating him. Like he was nothing. Like he was too stupid and poor to have any real skills or talents. Marcus had felt this way many times in his life, but it still hurt every time. He looked at the piano through the glass doors of the academy. It was a beautiful instrument, black and shiny. He had not played a real piano in many years, but he remembered what it felt like. His fingers remembered the feeling of the keys. Victoria was still talking, enjoying the attention from the crowd. "I am not being mean," she said to the people around her. "I am giving this man a chance to make easy money. All he has to do is play one little note. How hard can that be?" Some people in the crowd laughed. Others looked worried. A few started to walk away, not wanting to be part of what was happening. Marcus made his decision. He looked directly at Victoria and spoke in a clear, calm voice that surprised everyone. "I accept your challenge, Mrs. Sterling." Victoria's smile got even bigger. She was sure she would win. "Wonderful," she said. "Let us go inside right now. I cannot wait to keep my $10,000 safe in my purse where it belongs." The crowd followed them toward the doors of the academy, excitement and tension filling the air. Victoria felt like a queen leading her subjects to watch a show. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. Marcus walked behind her, his heart beating fast. It had been 20 years since he had played piano in front of people, 20 years since he had been forced to give up everything he loved. But tonight, maybe tonight, things would be different. The golden letters above the door seemed to shine brighter as they all walked into the Harmony Music Academy, where music and magic were about to meet. Inside the academy, the main hall was full of people in expensive clothes. Women wore shiny dresses and men had on perfect suits. Everyone was drinking wine and talking about money and business. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, making everything look bright and fancy. Victoria walked into the hall like she owned the place. Her high heels clicked on the marble floor, and her jewelry sparkled under the lights. Behind her, Marcus walked quietly, still wearing his old work clothes. The difference between them was clear to everyone who looked. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria called out in her loudest voice, "I have a special show for you tonight." People started to turn and look. Some recognized Victoria from other fancy events. They knew she was very rich and always liked to be the center of attention. Slowly, more and more people came over to see what was happening. "This kind gentleman here," Victoria said, pointing at Marcus, "says he can play piano. I have offered him $10,000 if he can play just one perfect note. Just one." The crowd grew bigger. Soon, almost everyone in the hall was watching. Some people looked excited, like they were about to see something fun. Others looked worried or uncomfortable. A few women whispered to each other behind their hands. Marcus stood quietly next to Victoria. He did not like all the attention, but he had made his choice. He would not back down now, even with all these people watching him. An older man in an expensive suit stepped forward. "Victoria, are you serious about this bet?" he asked. "Of course I am serious, Richard," Victoria replied. "I always keep my word. $10,000 for one perfect note. Easy money for him if he can actually do it." Richard looked at Marcus and shook his head. "This seems unfair. The man probably has never played a real piano before." Victoria laughed. "That is exactly my point, but I am giving him a chance. How generous is that?" More people took out their phones to record what was happening. In today's world, everything became a video that people shared on the internet. Some of them were already typing messages to their friends about the crazy rich woman and her bet. Marcus watched all the phones pointing at him. He thought about his life and how he had ended up here. 20 years ago, he had been a different person with a different name in the music world. But that was a long time ago, and these people did not know his story. A young woman with red hair pushed through the crowd. She was Sarah Martinez, a music teacher at the academy. Sarah knew Marcus because she often stayed late and saw him cleaning the building. They had talked many times during his night shifts. "Mrs. Sterling," Sarah said firmly, "Marcus is a good man. Why are you doing this to him?" Victoria turned to look at Sarah. She did not like being questioned, especially by someone who worked for a living like a teacher. "I am not doing anything to him. I am offering him money, $10,000. That is more than he probably makes in a year." "But you are making fun of him in front of all these people," Sarah said. "I am not making fun of anyone," Victoria replied. "If he can play one note correctly, he gets the money. If he cannot, then he should not have said he could play piano. Simple as that." Sarah looked at Marcus. She wanted to help him, but she did not know what to do. Marcus gave her a small smile that told her it was okay. "Thank you, Sarah," Marcus said softly. "But I can take care of myself." Dr. Williams, the director of the academy, heard about what was happening and came over to see. He was a tall man with white hair who had been running the music school for 30 years. He had seen many rich people come and go, but he had never seen anything like this. "What exactly is happening here?" Dr. Williams asked. Victoria explained the bet again, enjoying telling the story. Dr. Williams looked very unhappy. This was supposed to be a nice charity event, not a circus show. "Mrs. Sterling," Dr. Williams said carefully, "perhaps we should just enjoy the evening without any bets or challenges." "Oh, do not worry, Doctor," Victoria said with a wave of her hand. "This will be over quickly. One note and then we can all go back to the party." She turned to Marcus. "Well, are you ready? Or have you changed your mind? No one will think badly of you if you walk away now." Marcus looked around at all the faces watching him. Some looked mean, some looked sad, and some just looked curious. He thought about backing down. It would be easy to just say he was joking and walk away. Then all these people would forget about him and go back to their party. But he thought about Victoria's words and the way she had treated him. He thought about all the other times in his life when people had treated him like he was nothing, because he was poor. He thought about his sister who needed medicine and his old car that might not start tomorrow morning. "I am ready," Marcus said. Victoria clapped her hands together. "Wonderful. Where is the piano?" Dr. Williams pointed toward the back of the hall. There, on a small stage, sat a beautiful black grand piano. It was the Academy's most expensive instrument, worth more than most people's houses. "That is a very special piano," Dr. Williams said to Marcus. "It was made by the best piano makers in the world. Please be careful with it." Marcus nodded. "I will treat it with respect." The crowd began moving toward the piano. Victoria walked in front like she was leading a parade. She was having the time of her life. All these people were watching her, and she felt powerful and important. "Make some room, everyone," Victoria announced. "Give the man space to fail in peace." Some people in the crowd laughed at her joke. Others did not think it was funny at all. Marcus walked slowly toward the piano. With each step, he felt different. The closer he got to the instrument, the more his old feelings came back. His hands began to remember what it felt like to touch the keys. His heart began to beat faster, but not from fear, from excitement. Victoria followed close behind him. "Remember," she said loudly so everyone could hear. "Just one note. But it has to be perfect. No mistakes, no excuses." She opened her checkbook again and held it up. $10,000 waiting right here. All you have to do is earn it." Marcus reached the piano and stopped. He stood there for a moment, just looking at the instrument. It was indeed beautiful. The black surface was so shiny he could see his reflection in it. The white and black keys were clean and perfect. "Well?" Victoria said impatiently. "We do not have all night." Marcus slowly reached out and touched the piano's surface. It was smooth and cool under his fingers. He walked around to the side where the keys were and pulled out the bench. Something strange happened then. As Marcus sat down at the piano bench, his whole body seemed to change. His shoulders straightened. His back became straight. His hands found their natural position over the keys. Victoria was still talking to the crowd, making jokes and enjoying the attention. But some people were starting to notice the change in Marcus. Sarah, the teacher, saw it. Dr. Williams saw it. A few others in the crowd saw it too. The way Marcus sat at the piano was not like someone who had never played before. It was like someone who belonged there. "Any time now," Victoria called out. "Play your one note and let us get this over with." Marcus placed his hands gently on the keys. He could feel the weight of them under his fingers. He could feel the potential for music that lived inside this beautiful instrument. He looked up at the crowd one more time. All these people were waiting to see him fail. All except for Sarah and Dr. Williams, who were starting to look very curious about what might happen next. Marcus took a deep breath. After 20 years of silence, he was about to make music again. Victoria stood with her pen ready to put her checkbook away. She was already thinking about how she would tell this story to her friends tomorrow. The poor gatekeeper who thought he could play piano. Everyone would laugh. But Marcus was thinking about something very different. He was thinking about the last time he had played piano, and about all the music that had been locked inside him for 20 long years. The room became very quiet. Even Victoria stopped talking. Everyone was watching Marcus's hands as they hovered over the keys. And then Marcus began to play. The moment Marcus placed his fingers on the piano keys, something magical happened. It was like watching a sleeping giant wake up after a very long dream. His whole body seemed to come alive in a way that no one in the room had expected. Victoria was still smiling, sure that she was about to win her bet easily. She stood with her checkbook in one hand and her pen in the other, ready to put them both away after Marcus failed to play even one good note. But the people who were watching Marcus closely began to see something different. Sarah, the teacher, noticed it first. She had studied music her whole life, and she knew what a real musician looked like. The way Marcus was sitting at the piano was not the way a beginner would sit. Dr. Williams noticed it too. He had been around professional musicians for 30 years. He could tell the difference between someone who was pretending to play piano and someone who really knew how to do it. Marcus was definitely not pretending. Marcus sat perfectly straight on the piano bench. His feet were placed exactly right on the floor. His hands were curved in the correct position over the keys. Even before he played a single note, he looked like he belonged at that piano. "What is he waiting for?" Victoria asked loudly. "Just play the note already." Marcus did not answer her. He was concentrating on something much more important than Victoria's impatience. He was remembering. 20 years is a long time to go without touching a piano. But for Marcus, it felt like no time had passed at all. His fingers remembered exactly where to go. His hands remembered the weight of the keys. His whole body remembered what it felt like to make music. He closed his eyes for just a moment. In his mind, he could see his old music teacher, Mr. Peterson, sitting next to him on the piano bench. He could hear Mr. Peterson's kind voice saying, "Remember, Marcus, the piano is not just an instrument. It is a way to speak to people's hearts." Marcus opened his eyes and looked down at the keys. They seemed to glow under the bright lights of the hall. Each key was perfect and clean, waiting to be touched. The crowd was getting restless. Some people were starting to whisper to each other. A few were looking at their watches, wanting to get back to the party. "This is taking too long," someone in the crowd said. "Maybe he does not know how to play after all," said another person. Victoria heard these comments and felt even more confident. "See?" she said to everyone around her. "I told you this would be easy money for me to keep." But Marcus was not thinking about the money anymore. He was not thinking about Victoria or the crowd or the bet. He was thinking about music and about how much he had missed it. Slowly, very slowly, Marcus raised his right hand. His index finger moved toward one specific key, middle C, right in the center of the piano. It was the most basic note in music, the one that all other notes are measured against. Victoria watched his finger move toward the key and laughed. "Middle C? Really? That is the most simple note on the piano. Even a child could play that." What Victoria did not understand was that playing a note perfectly is not about which note you choose. It is about how you touch the key, how you control the sound, and how you make the music speak to people's hearts. Marcus's finger touched the key. The sound that came from the piano was like nothing anyone in that room had ever heard before. It was just one note, middle C, but it was perfect in every way possible. The note rang out clear and strong, filling the entire hall. It was not too loud and not too soft. It was not too sharp and not too flat. It held exactly the right amount of feeling. Not sad, not happy, but something deeper and more beautiful than either of those emotions. But Marcus did not stop with just one note. His left hand came down to join his right hand on the keys. Then both hands began to move together, creating a soft, gentle melody that seemed to float through the air like a whisper. The crowd became completely silent. Even Victoria stopped talking. Everyone was listening to the most beautiful music they had ever heard in their lives. Marcus was playing a piece called Nocturne in E-flat major by a famous composer named Chopin. It was one of the most difficult and beautiful piano pieces ever written. Only the very best piano players in the world could play it correctly, and Marcus was playing it perfectly. His fingers danced across the keys like they were meant to be there. His hands moved together in perfect harmony, creating layers of sound that built on top of each other like a musical castle made of air and dreams. Victoria's mouth fell open. The checkbook slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. She could not believe what she was hearing. This was not the simple note she had expected. This was professional-level music being played by someone she had thought was just a poor, unskilled worker. Sarah, the teacher, had tears in her eyes. She knew how difficult this piece was to play, and she knew that Marcus was playing it better than most professional musicians she had heard. Dr. Williams was standing completely still, his face full of amazement. In 30 years of running the music academy, he had heard thousands of students and teachers play piano, but he had never heard anyone play with such perfect skill and such deep emotion at the same time. The music filled every corner of the hall. It seemed to touch every person in the room in a different way. Some people felt happy, some felt sad, and some felt things they did not even have words for. Marcus's eyes were closed now, and his whole body was moving gently with the music. He was no longer the quiet, humble gatekeeper who had been checking names at the door. He was a musician, an artist, someone who could speak to people's souls through the language of music. The piece he was playing told a story without using any words. It spoke about love and loss, about dreams and disappointment, about hope and sadness all mixed together. Every person listening could hear their own life story in the music. Victoria felt something she had never felt before. The music was making her think about her own life in a new way. She thought about all the times she had been mean to people who had less money than her. She thought about how she had judged Marcus without knowing anything about him. For the first time in her life, Victoria Sterling felt ashamed of herself. The other people in the crowd were having their own thoughts and feelings. Some of them realized they had been wrong to laugh and expect Marcus to fail. Others were simply lost in the beauty of the music, forgetting about everything else in the world. Marcus played for almost 10 minutes, though it felt like both forever and no time at all. His fingers never made a single mistake. Every note was exactly where it should be, exactly when it should be there, exactly as beautiful as it could possibly be. When the last note faded away into silence, no one in the room moved or spoke for a long moment. They were all still lost in the magic of what they had just experienced. Finally, Dr. Williams began to clap. Then Sarah joined him. Then, one by one, every person in the room began to applaud. But it was not the polite clapping you usually hear at fancy parties. It was the kind of applause that comes from deep in people's hearts when they have witnessed something truly amazing. Marcus opened his eyes and looked up at the crowd. He seemed surprised by all the clapping, like he had forgotten there were other people in the room. Victoria was still standing in the same spot, her mouth still open in shock. Her expensive checkbook was still on the floor where she had dropped it. She looked like she had just seen a ghost, or maybe an angel. Marcus stood up from the piano bench and walked back toward Victoria. His posture was different now. He still looked humble and kind, but there was also something else in his face. A quiet dignity that had not been there before. "I believe you owe me $10,000, Marcus said softly. But everyone in the room, including Victoria, knew that what had just happened was worth much more than any amount of money. Victoria stared at Marcus like she was seeing him for the first time. The man standing in front of her was not the same person who had been checking names at the door just an hour ago. This was someone completely different. Someone who had just played piano like a master. I don't understand," Victoria whispered. Her voice was shaky and weak, nothing like the loud, confident voice she had used before. The applause was still going on around them. People were clapping and cheering, but Victoria could barely hear it. All she could think about was the beautiful music that had just filled the room, and how wrong she had been about everything. Marcus bent down and picked up Victoria's checkbook from the floor. He handed it to her gently, like he was giving her a fragile piece of glass that might break. "You said $10,000 for one perfect note," Marcus said quietly. "I played many notes, but the first one was middle C, and it was perfect." Victoria took the checkbook with trembling hands. She looked around at all the faces watching her. Everyone was waiting to see what she would do next. Some people looked angry at her for being so mean to Marcus. Others looked curious about what would happen now. Dr. Williams stepped forward and put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. "That was incredible," he said, his voice full of respect. "I have been around music my whole life, and I have never heard Chopin played so beautifully." "Chopin?" Victoria asked, confused. But you were supposed to play just one note." "I did play one note," Marcus replied, "and then I played a few more." Sarah, the teacher, was wiping tears from her eyes. "Marcus, where did you learn to play like that? That level of skill takes years and years to develop." Marcus looked uncomfortable with all the attention. He was not used to being the center of everyone's focus. For the past 20 years, he had tried to stay invisible, to not be noticed by anyone. "It was a long time ago," he said simply. But the people around him wanted to know more. Someone in the crowd called out, "Are you a professional musician?" Another person asked, "Do you teach piano?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I am just the gatekeeper here, and I clean the building at night." "But nobody plays like that without professional training," Dr. Williams said. "That kind of skill doesn't just happen by accident." Victoria was still, holding her checkbook, but she had not opened it yet. Her mind was spinning with questions and confusion. Everything she thought she knew about the world had just been turned upside down. An older woman in the crowd spoke up. "Young man, I have been going to piano concerts for 50 years. What you just played was better than most of the performances I have paid hundreds of dollars to see." "She's right," said a man in an expensive suit. "I know good music when I hear it. You could be performing in concert halls around the world." Marcus looked down at his worn-out shoes and old clothes. "Those days are behind me," he said softly. "What days?" Sarah asked gently. "Marcus, please tell us. Where did you learn to play like that?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Everyone in the room was waiting for his answer. Even Victoria stopped thinking about her checkbook and listened carefully. Finally, Marcus began to speak. His voice was soft, and everyone had to lean in to hear him clearly. "My real name is Marcus Chen," he said. 20 years ago, I was a music student. I had won several competitions and was accepted to study at the best music schools in the country." The crowd gasped. A few people started whispering to each other, but most everyone stayed quiet, wanting to hear the rest of his story. "I was supposed to go to the New York Music Conservatory," Marcus continued. "I had a full scholarship. My teachers said I had the talent to become a concert pianist, maybe even play with the world's best orchestras." "What happened?" Dr. Williams asked gently. Marcus's face became sad, and his voice got even quieter. "My parents died in a car accident. It was sudden. They were driving home from one of my recitals when it happened. After that, everything changed." Victoria felt her heart sink. She began to understand that Marcus's story was much more complicated and painful than she had ever imagined. I had 3 younger siblings, Marcus went on. My sister was only 12, and my 2 brothers were 14 and 16. After our parents died, there was no one else to take care of them. The state wanted to put them in different foster homes, split them up. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. She could see where this story was going, and it was breaking her heart. So I gave up my scholarship, Marcus said. I turned down the music school and got a job instead. I became the legal guardian of my siblings. I worked during the day and took care of them at night. There was no time for music anymore, no money for piano lessons or practice time. The room was completely silent now. Even the people who had been whispering stopped talking. Everyone was listening to Marcus's story with full attention. I sold my piano to pay for my sister's school clothes, Marcus continued. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, just to keep food on the table and a roof over our heads. My siblings were the most important thing in my life. Their future mattered more than my dreams. Victoria felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She had never heard a story like this before. In her world, people did not give up their dreams to take care of others. In her world, people hired other people to solve their problems. What about your siblings now? Someone in the crowd asked. 4. The first time since he started telling his story, Marcus smiled a little. They all grew up to be wonderful people. My sister is a nurse at the children's hospital. One brother is a teacher and the other one is an engineer. They all have good lives, good jobs, families of their own. And you? Sarah asked. What happened to your music? Marcus shrugged. I put it away. I told myself it was just a childhood dream that I had outgrown. For 20 years I have not touched a piano. Until tonight. Dr. Williams was staring at Marcus with amazement and respect. You gave up a career as a concert pianist to raise your siblings? It was not really a choice, Marcus said. They needed me. Family comes first. Victoria finally found her voice again. But you're so talented, you could have been famous, rich, successful. Marcus looked at her with kind eyes. Mrs. Sterling, my siblings are all happy and healthy. They have good lives because someone was there to help them when they needed it most. That makes me more successful than any concert career ever could have. The truth of Marcus's words hit Victoria like a physical blow. She thought about her own life, all her money and fancy clothes and expensive things. She thought about how she spent her days shopping and gossiping and looking down on people who had less than her. And then she thought about Marcus, who had given up everything he loved to take care of his family, who had worked humble jobs for 20 years without complaining, who had just played the most beautiful music she had ever heard, even after 2 decades away from the piano. Victoria opened her checkbook with shaking hands. She had promised $10,000, and she would keep that promise. But now the money seemed like such a small thing compared to what she had learned about Marcus and about herself. As she started to write the check, she realized that this night had changed her in ways she was just beginning to understand. The woman who had walked into the academy a few hours ago was not the same woman who was standing here now. And it was all because of a man who had proven that real worth has nothing to do with money, clothes, or social status. Real worth comes from the size of your heart and the sacrifices you are willing to make for the people you love. Dr. Williams could not stop staring at Marcus. Something about the name Marcus Chen was familiar to him, but he could not remember where he had heard it before. Then, like lightning hitting his brain, the memory came back to him. Wait, Doctor, Williams said, his voice full of excitement. Marcus Chen, I know that name. Are you the same Marcus Chen who won the National Youth Piano Competition 21 years ago? Marcus nodded slowly. Yes, that was me. The crowd began to whisper again. The National Youth Piano Competition was one of the most important music contests in the country. Only the very best young musicians even got to compete in it. And winning, it meant you were truly special. Dr. Williams's eyes got wide. I remember now. You were only 19 years old, and you played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 with the National Symphony Orchestra. The newspapers called it the performance of the decade. You played with the National Symphony Orchestra? Sarah asked, amazed. That was one of the most famous orchestras in the world. Most musicians could only dream of playing with them. Marcus looked embarrassed by all the attention his past was getting. "It was a long time ago," he said quietly. But Dr. Williams was not done remembering. "After you won that competition, every major music school in the country wanted you. The newspapers said you were going to be the next great American pianist. There were articles about you in music magazines. What happened to you? You just disappeared from the music world." Now Victoria understood why Marcus's playing had been so incredible. He had not just learned piano as a hobby. He had been a professional-level musician, someone who was supposed to become famous and successful. "The car accident happened 2 weeks after that competition," Marcus explained. "I was supposed to start at the New York Music Conservatory in the fall, but after my parents died, everything changed." An elderly man in the crowd stepped forward. He had silver hair and wore a very expensive suit. "Excuse me," he said politely. "My name is Robert Harrison. I am a music critic for the Times newspaper. I was at your performance with the National Symphony Orchestra 21 years ago." Marcus looked surprised. "You were there?" "I was," Robert said. "And I wrote the review that called it the performance of the decade. I have been to thousands of concerts in my career, but I have never forgotten that night. The way you played, it was like the piano was part of your soul." Victoria felt even worse about her behavior earlier. She had been making fun of someone who was once considered one of the most promising young musicians in the country. "I looked for you for years after that," Robert continued. "I wanted to interview you, to write about your career. But you had vanished. No one knew where you had gone. The music world lost track of you completely. I wanted it that way," Marcus said. "I needed to focus on my family. I could not have people from my old life trying to contact me or convince me to change my mind. My siblings needed all of my attention." Sarah was crying openly now. "You gave up everything," she whispered. "You had the chance to be one of the world's great musicians, and you gave it up for your family." "It was the right choice," Marcus said firmly. "I have no regrets." But Victoria could see that this was not completely true. When Marcus talked about his old life in music, there was sadness in his eyes. He had made the right choice, but it had cost him dearly. Dr. Williams shook his head in amazement. "Marcus, do you understand how rare your level of talent is? There might be only a dozen people in the world who can play piano the way you just played tonight." "That may be true," Marcus replied. "But there were only 3 children in the world who needed me to be their guardian and protector. They were more important than any talent I might have had." Robert, the music critic, was taking notes in a small notebook. "This is an incredible story," he said. "The lost genius who sacrificed his career for family. Would you be willing to let me write about this? People should know what you did." Marcus looked uncomfortable. "I do not want to be in the newspapers, Mr. Harrison. I am just a regular person now." "But you are not just a regular person," Dr. Williams said. "What you just played proves that your talent is still there, maybe even stronger than before. 20 years away from the piano, and you played like you had been practicing every day." Victoria finally finished writing the check. Her hands were still shaking as she tore it out of the checkbook and handed it to Marcus. "Here is your $10,000, she said softly. "You earned it." Marcus took the check, but he did not look at it. Instead, he looked directly at Victoria. "Mrs. Sterling, I want you to know that I do not blame you for what happened tonight. You did not know my story." Victoria felt even worse. Here was a man who had every right to be angry with her, and instead he was being kind and understanding. "I was horrible to you," she said. "I judged you without knowing anything about you." "We all make mistakes," Marcus said gently. "What matters is what we learn from them." Sarah stepped closer to Marcus. "What will you do now? Will you start playing piano again?" Marcus looked down at the check in his hands. $10,000 was more money than he usually saw at one time, but he knew it would not last forever. He still had bills to pay and a life to live. "I do not know," he said honestly. "I have not thought about music as part of my future for so long. It is hard to imagine." Dr. Williams had an idea. Marcus, would you consider teaching here at the academy? We always need good piano instructors and well, you might be the best pianist I have ever heard. But I do not have the right education credentials, Marcus said. I never finished music school. Your performance tonight is worth more than any degree, Dr. Williams replied. I would hire you immediately if you were interested. Marcus thought about this offer. Teaching music would mean being around pianos every day. It would mean sharing his love of music with young students. It would mean returning to the world he had left behind so long ago. I will think about it, he said. Robert, the music critic, was still taking notes. Marcus, even if you do not want publicity, would you consider giving just one public concert? There are people who remember your performance from 21 years ago. They would love to hear you play again. I could not afford to rent a concert hall, Marcus said. You would not have to, Dr. Williams said quickly. We could host a concert right here at the academy. All the money from ticket sales could go to our scholarship fund for students who cannot afford music lessons. Victoria listened to all this talk about concerts and teaching jobs and scholarship funds. She thought about how Marcus had asked for the $10,000 to go to charity instead of keeping it for himself, even though he clearly needed the money. An idea began to form in Victoria's mind. It was a bigger idea than she had ever had before, an idea that could change not just Marcus's life but many other lives too. Marcus, Victoria said suddenly, what if I told you there was a way for you to have both? A way to return to music and still help people the way you helped your siblings? Everyone turned to look at Victoria. They were curious about what she was thinking. Victoria took a deep breath. She was about to suggest something that would change her own life as much as it might change Marcus's life. But for the first time, in years, she felt like she was about to do something truly important. I have an idea, Victoria said, and I think it could help a lot of people. Victoria looked at the check she had just given to Marcus, then at all the faces watching her. For the first time in her adult life, she felt truly ashamed of her behavior. But more than that, she felt inspired by Marcus's story and wanted to do something meaningful with her wealth. Marcus, Victoria said, her voice stronger now, I owe you much more than $10,000. Marcus looked confused. Mrs. Sterling, we had an agreement. You kept your word. No. Victoria shook her head. I owe you an apology for treating you so poorly. I owe you respect for the incredible sacrifice you made for your family. And I owe you something else. A chance to return to the music world, if that is what you want. The crowd was listening carefully. They could tell that Victoria was about to say something important. I have been thinking about what Dr. Williams said, about giving a concert and helping students who cannot afford music lessons, Victoria continued. What if we could do much more than that? She turned to face the whole crowd, her voice getting more excited as her idea grew bigger in her mind. What if we created a foundation? A place where talented people like Marcus, people who had to give up their dreams because of difficult circumstances, could get help returning to their art? Sarah gasped. That is a wonderful idea. Dr. Williams nodded enthusiastically. There are so many gifted people out there who never got the chance to develop their talents because of poverty or family problems. Victoria looked back at Marcus. You gave up your career to help your siblings. What if I used my money to help you and others like you get back to doing what you love? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He was not used to people offering to help him. For 20 years, he had been the one helping others. Mrs. Sterling, he said carefully, that is very generous, but I cannot accept charity. It would not be charity, Victoria said quickly. It would be an investment in talent and dreams and second chances. Robert, the music critic, looked up from his notebook. Victoria, are you serious about this? Do you understand how much a foundation like that would cost? Victoria thought about her bank account, her expensive house, her collection of jewelry and designer clothes. She thought about all the money she spent on things that did not really matter to her or to anyone else. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, she said honestly. For years I have been wasting it on meaningless things. This would give my wealth a real purpose. She turned back to Marcus. You would not just be receiving help from the foundation. You would help run it. You would use your experience to find other people with hidden talents and give them opportunities they never thought they could have. Marcus was still holding the $10,000 check, but he was not looking at it anymore. He was thinking about Victoria's idea and what it could mean for people like him. There must be thousands of people out there, he said slowly, who had to choose between their dreams and their responsibilities. Exactly, Victoria said. Single mothers who wanted to be artists but had to work 2 jobs instead. Young people who could not afford music school. Older people who gave up their talents to take care of sick family members. We could help them all. Dr. Williams was getting more and more excited about the idea. We could identify talented people in communities all over the country. We could provide them with instruments, lessons, performance opportunities. We could give them scholarships to music schools, Sarah added, or help them start their own teaching studios in areas where children do not have access to music education. Victoria felt her heart beating faster. This was the most excited she had felt about anything in years. All her life, she had used her money to buy things for herself. Now she was imagining using it to buy dreams for other people. Marcus, she said, what do you think? Would you be willing to help me start something like this? Marcus looked around at all the hopeful faces watching him. He thought about his own lost dreams and how it had felt to play piano again tonight. He thought about other people out there who might be working as janitors or security guards or waitresses, but who had incredible talents hidden inside them. I think, Marcus said slowly, that it could help a lot of people. Victoria smiled the biggest, most genuine smile she had shown in years. Then let's do it. But Marcus held up his hand. There is one condition, he said. Victoria's smile faltered. A little. What condition? Marcus looked down at the $10,000 check in his hands. I want this money to be the first donation to the foundation. I do not want to keep it for myself. The crowd was amazed. Here was a man who clearly needed the money, but he wanted to give it away to help others instead. Marcus, Victoria said softly, that money is yours. You earned it. And I want to use it to help the first person we find through the foundation, Marcus replied. Someone who needs a chance the way I needed a chance 20 years ago. Victoria felt tears coming to her eyes. She had spent the evening learning about Marcus's character, and he continued to surprise her with his generosity and selflessness. There is something else, Marcus continued. If we do this foundation, we have to do it right. We cannot just throw money at people and hope for the best. We need to really understand their situations and help them in ways that will truly change their lives. Dr. Williams nodded. Marcus is right. A foundation like this would need careful planning and good management. I know I do not have experience running a charity, Victoria said, but I am willing to learn. And Marcus, you understand what it is like to need help but also to have pride and dignity. You could make sure we treat people the right way. Robert, the music critic, was writing as fast as he could. This is an incredible story. From a cruel bet to a charitable foundation, all in one evening. Victoria realized that Robert was right. The evening had started with her making a mean joke at Marcus's expense, and now they were talking about starting an organization to help people achieve their dreams. We should have a name for the foundation, Sarah suggested. Everyone thought, for a moment. Finally, Marcus spoke up. What about second chance music? That is what this would be for people like me. A second chance to pursue music when we thought that chance was gone forever. Second chance music, Victoria repeated. I love it. She looked around at all the people who had witnessed this strange and wonderful evening. Would anyone else like to be part of this? We will need board members, volunteers, people to help us find talented individuals who need support. Several hands went up immediately. Dr. Williams volunteered to help identify gifted students. Sarah offered to help with music education programs. Robert said he could use his contacts in the music world to create performance opportunities. Victoria felt something she had never experienced before. the joy of using her wealth to create something meaningful and lasting. For the first time in her life, she was excited about tomorrow and all the possibilities it might bring. "Marcus," she said, "are you ready to change some lives?" Marcus smiled and nodded. "I think I am ready to try." As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Victoria and Marcus stood together near the piano where everything had started. The instrument that had revealed Marcus's hidden talent would now be the symbol of their new partnership and their shared mission to help others find their own second chances. Victoria had come to the academy that night as a selfish, arrogant woman who looked down on people with less money than her. She was leaving as someone with a purpose, a mission, and a new understanding of what really mattered in life. And Marcus, who had arrived as an invisible gatekeeper that no one noticed, was leaving as the inspiration for a foundation that could change hundreds of lives. Sometimes the most important moments in life happen when we least expect them. 3 days after the charity event, Victoria sat in her large, empty house feeling different than she had ever felt before. The house that used to make her feel important now felt too big and too quiet. Her expensive furniture and paintings looked meaningless compared to the memory of Marcus playing piano. She had not been able to stop thinking about that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she could hear the beautiful music Marcus had played. Every time she looked at her checkbook, she remembered the shame she had felt when she realized how wrong she had been about him. Victoria picked up her phone and called the Harmony Music Academy. She asked to speak to Dr. Williams. "Hello, Mrs. Sterling," Dr. Williams said when he came to the phone. "I was hoping you would call. Have you been thinking more about the foundation idea?" "I have not been able to think about anything else," Victoria replied. "Dr. Williams, I want to start working on this right away. Is Marcus there today?" "He is," Dr. Williams said. "Actually, he has been coming in every day since the event. He sits at the piano for hours, playing and practicing. I think being around music again has awakened something in him." Victoria felt her heart beat faster. "May I come over and talk to both of you? I have some ideas I would like to share." An hour later, Victoria walked into the academy. She was dressed, more simply than usual. No expensive jewelry or fancy clothes. She wanted Marcus to see that she was serious about changing the way she lived. She found Marcus in the main hall, sitting at the same piano where he had played 3 nights before. His fingers were moving gently over the keys, creating soft, beautiful sounds. When he saw Victoria coming, he stopped playing and stood up. "Mrs. Sterling," he said politely, "Dr. Williams told me you wanted to talk." "Please call me Victoria," she said, "and please keep playing. I do not want to interrupt your practice." Marcus sat back down at the piano but did not start playing again. "What did you want to discuss?" Victoria pulled out a folder from her purse. "I have been doing research on charitable foundations. I have also been thinking about what you said, about doing this the right way and really understanding people's situations." Dr. Williams joined them, curious about what Victoria had learned. "I spoke to my lawyer and my accountant," Victoria continued. "I want to start the Second Chance Music Foundation with $1 million. Marcus and Dr. Williams both gasped. $1 million was an enormous amount of money, enough to help many, many people achieve their dreams. "Victoria," Marcus said carefully, "that is incredibly generous, but are you sure? That is a lot of money to commit to something we have not even planned yet." "I am sure," Victoria replied firmly. "But I want to make sure we spend it wisely. That is why I need your help, Marcus. You understand what it is like to have talent but not opportunities. You know what kind of help would really make a difference." She opened her folder and took out several papers. "I have been thinking about different ways the foundation could help people. We could provide scholarships for music school. We could buy instruments for people who cannot afford them. We could pay for private lessons or help people attend music camps." Dr. Williams looked at the papers. "These are all excellent ideas. But," Victoria said, looking at Marcus, "I realize that money is not always the biggest problem. Sometimes people need other kinds of support too." Marcus nodded. "What do you mean?" "Well, think about your situation," Victoria explained. "Even if someone had offered to pay for your music school 20 years ago, You still could not have gone because you needed to take care of your siblings. The money would not have solved your real problem. That is true, Marcus agreed. So I was thinking, Victoria continued, what if the foundation did more than just give money? What if we helped people solve the other problems that prevent them from pursuing music? Dr. Williams was interested. Like what kind of problems? Victoria looked at her notes. Childcare, for example. Maybe there is a single mother who wants to attend music school, but she cannot because she has no one to watch her children. What if the foundation paid for babysitting so she could go to classes? Marcus's eyes lit up. Or transportation. Maybe there is someone who lives far from any music teachers, but they could take lessons if they had a way to get there. Exactly, Victoria said, excited that Marcus understood her thinking. Or what about someone who has talent but does not know how to audition for music school or how to apply for other scholarships? We could provide mentoring and guidance, not just money. Dr. Williams was impressed. Victoria, you have really thought this through. I want to do this right, Victoria said. I want the foundation to truly change people's lives, not just give them temporary help. Marcus stood up from the piano and began walking slowly around the room. Victoria could tell he was thinking deeply about something. There is another problem we should think about, Marcus said finally. What is that? Victoria asked. Pride, Marcus said simply. Many people who need help are too proud to ask for it. I was like that. Even now, part of me feels uncomfortable accepting help from you because I am used to taking care of myself. Victoria nodded. How do we solve that problem? Marcus thought for a moment. We make it clear that this is not charity. It is an investment. We tell people that we believe in their talent and want to invest in their future success. And we ask them to give something back to the foundation later, when they are able. Like what? Dr. Williams asked. Maybe they teach younger students for free for a certain number of hours, Marcus suggested. Or maybe they perform at fundraising concerts for the foundation. Or maybe they help us find other talented people who need support. Victoria was writing down everything Marcus said, so people would not just receive help, they would become part of the foundation family and help others too. Right, Marcus said. That way, it feels like a partnership instead of charity. Dr. Williams smiled. You two make a good team. You both understand different sides of this issue. Victoria looked at Marcus. Would you be willing to be my partner in this? Not just as someone who helps find people to support, but as the co-founder and co-director of the foundation? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Finally, he asked, what would that mean exactly? It would mean that this foundation is as much yours as it is mine, Victoria explained. You would help make all the important decisions. You would interview people who apply for help. You would design the programs we offer and, she paused, you would be paid a salary for this work. Marcus shook his head. I do not want to be paid for helping people. Marcus, Victoria said gently, if you are going to spend your time working for the foundation, you need to be able to pay your bills. Besides, your experience and wisdom are valuable. The foundation should pay for valuable work. Dr. Williams agreed. Marcus, you would be providing a professional service. There is nothing wrong with being paid for that. Marcus thought about this. He had been working low-paying jobs for 20 years, always struggling to pay his rent and buy groceries. The idea of having a steady income while doing work he cared about was very appealing. What about my job here at the academy? Marcus asked. Dr. Williams smiled. I have been thinking about that too. What if the foundation had its headquarters here at the academy? Marcus could keep his office here, and we could provide meeting rooms and practice spaces for foundation programs. Victoria clapped her hands together. That is perfect. The academy already has everything we need: pianos, music rooms, administrative offices. Marcus looked around the hall where he had cleaned floors for 5 years and where he had rediscovered his love of music 3 days ago. The idea of working here as a professional, helping other people achieve their musical dreams, felt like a miracle. There is one more thing, Marcus said. I want my first project to be finding my replacement. Your replacement? Victoria asked, confused. Marcus smiled. There must be other people like me working in schools and offices and restaurants. People with hidden talents who need a second chance. I want to find them and help them the way you are helping me." Victoria felt tears in her eyes. Even as Marcus was being offered a chance to change his own life, he was thinking about helping others. "Marcus," she said softly, "I think you are going to be the best partner I could have asked for." Dr. Williams watched the two of them and smiled. 3 days ago, these two people had been strangers who misunderstood each other completely. Now they were planning to work together to change lives all across the country. "So," Dr. Williams said, "when do we start?" Victoria and Marcus looked at each other and spoke at the same time. "Right now." The Second Chance Music Foundation was about to be born, and its first miracle had already happened, turning a cruel joke into a life-changing partnership between two people who had learned that the most beautiful music comes from the heart. 1 year later, Victoria sat in the front row of Carnegie Hall, the most famous concert hall in America. Her heart was beating fast with excitement and nervousness. Tonight was Marcus's debut recital, and she could hardly believe how much had changed since that night at the Academy. The hall was completely full. Every seat was taken, and there was a waiting list of people who wanted to attend but could not get tickets. Word had spread through the music world about the lost genius who had been found working as a janitor and was now making his return to professional music. Victoria looked around at the audience and saw many familiar faces. Dr. Williams was there, with several teachers from the Academy. Sarah sat nearby with some of her students. Robert Harrison, the music critic, was in the press section with his notebook ready. Even some of Marcus's old music school classmates had come to hear him play. But the people Victoria was most excited to see were sitting in the special section near the front. These were the first 10 people who had been helped by the Second Chance Music Foundation. Each one had a story similar to Marcus's, talented individuals who had given up their dreams because of difficult circumstances, but who were now getting a second chance. There was Maria, a single mother of 3 who had wanted to be an opera singer but had to work 2 jobs to support her children. The foundation was paying for her voice lessons and childcare so she could attend music school. There was James, a factory worker who had taught himself to play violin by watching videos on the internet. The foundation had bought him a professional violin and connected him with a master teacher. There was elderly Mrs. Patterson, who had been a promising jazz pianist in her youth, but had to stop playing when she got married and raised 6 children. Now, at age 70, she was taking lessons again and planned to perform at local jazz clubs. Each person had been found through the careful process that Marcus and Victoria had developed. They did not just advertise for applications. Instead, they went out into communities and looked for hidden talents. Marcus would visit schools, hospitals, factories, and other workplaces, listening for people who hummed while they worked or who mentioned loving music, but never having the chance to pursue it seriously. The foundation had grown beyond what Victoria and Marcus had ever imagined. The original $1 million had been joined by donations from other wealthy people who were inspired by their mission. They now had enough money to help hundreds of people every year. But more importantly, they had created a community. People who received help from the foundation stayed connected, supporting each other and helping to find new talented individuals who needed assistance. Just as Marcus had suggested, everyone gave back to the foundation in some way. Teaching, free lessons, performing at fundraising concerts, or serving as mentors to newer recipients. Victoria herself had changed dramatically. She no longer spent her days shopping or gossiping with other rich women. Instead, she worked at the foundation office every day, interviewing applicants, organizing programs, and traveling around the country to find new people to help. Her friends, from her old social circle, barely recognized her. She dressed simply now, lived in a smaller house, and drove a regular car instead of expensive luxury vehicles. Some of her old friends thought she had lost her mind, but Victoria had never been happier. The lights in Carnegie Hall began to dim, and the audience became quiet. Victoria felt her stomach flip with nervousness. She knew how much this concert meant to Marcus. For the past year, Marcus had been working harder than she had ever seen anyone work. He practiced piano for hours every day, rebuilding the technical skills that had remained hidden for 20 years. He worked with the best piano teachers in the country, preparing for this moment, but he had also been working just as hard for the foundation. He interviewed every person who applied for help, making sure they were truly committed to their musical dreams. He designed programs and created policies. He traveled to schools and community centers, looking for hidden talents. Victoria had watched Marcus transform from a quiet, humble janitor into a confident leader and artist. The change was remarkable, but she could see that the core of who he was, his kindness, his dedication to helping others, had not changed at all. The curtain rose, and Marcus walked onto the stage. He wore a simple black suit and looked calm and dignified. When he saw the full audience, he smiled and bowed politely. Victoria felt tears coming to her eyes. A year ago, this man had been invisible to the world, checking names at a door and cleaning floors at night. Now he was about to perform at the most prestigious concert hall in America. Marcus sat down at the beautiful grand piano in the center of the stage. The hall became completely silent. Even the people in the balcony seemed to be holding their breath. He began with the same piece he had played that night at the Academy, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. But this time, after a year of intensive practice and preparation, his playing was even more beautiful than it had been before. The music filled every corner of Carnegie Hall. Victoria closed her eyes and let the sound wash over her. She thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment, the cruel joke that had become a blessing, the partnership that had grown into a friendship, and the foundation that had already changed so many lives. As Marcus continued playing, Victoria opened her eyes and looked around at the audience. Everyone was completely absorbed in the music. Some people were crying. Others had expressions of pure joy on their faces. The 10 foundation recipients were beaming with pride, watching their mentor and friend achieve his dream. Marcus played for almost 2 hours, performing pieces by Chopin, Bach, Mozart, and Rachmaninoff. Each piece was played with perfect technical skill. But more than that, each piece was filled with emotion and meaning that came from his life experiences. When he finished the final piece, the audience erupted in applause that seemed to go on forever. People stood up and cheered. Some threw flowers onto the stage. Marcus stood at the piano and bowed, his face showing a mixture of joy, relief, and gratitude. After several minutes of applause, Marcus walked to the front of the stage and raised his hand for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a clear, strong voice, "thank you for this incredible welcome. A year ago, I thought my musical dreams were buried forever, but sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them." He looked directly at Victoria in the front row. "I want to thank Victoria Sterling, my partner and friend, who saw something in me that I had forgotten was there. This concert would not have happened without her belief in second chances." The audience applauded again, and Victoria felt her face turn red with embarrassment and pride. "But most importantly," Marcus continued, "I want to thank all of you for supporting the Second Chance Music Foundation. Every ticket sold tonight, every donation made, goes directly to help other people achieve their musical dreams. You are not just audience members, you are part of a movement to make sure that talent and dreams are never wasted because of circumstances beyond someone's control." He gestured toward the section where the foundation recipients were sitting. Some of those people are here tonight. They are teachers, students, factory workers, and parents who thought their chances for music careers were gone forever. But, with your support, they are proving that it is never too late to pursue your dreams. The audience gave another long round of applause, this time directed at the foundation recipients, who stood and waved. As the evening ended, and people began to leave the hall, Victoria made her way backstage to find Marcus. She found him in his dressing room, still in his concert clothes but looking tired and happy. "Marcus," she said, "that was the most beautiful concert I've ever heard." "Thank you," he replied, "and thank you for making it possible. None of this would have happened without you." Victoria shook her head. "We made it happen together. That is what partnerships are for." Dr. Williams came into the dressing room, followed by Sarah and several other people from the academy. "Marcus," Dr. Williams said, "you have outdone yourself. That performance will be talked about for years." Robert Harrison appeared with his notebook. Marcus, I would like to write a follow-up story about tonight. The first article I wrote about the foundation has inspired similar programs in 3 other cities. People want to know how this all began. Marcus looked at Victoria. What do you think? Should we tell people the whole story? Victoria laughed. You mean the part where I was horrible to you and made a bet I was sure I would win? That part is important, Marcus said seriously. It shows that people can change and that good things can come from bad beginnings. Victoria nodded. Then, yes, tell the whole story. Maybe it will inspire other people to look beyond appearances and give second chances. As the crowd in the dressing room began to thin out, Victoria and Marcus found themselves alone for the first time that evening. So what happens now? Victoria asked. You have achieved your dream of performing at Carnegie Hall. What is next? Marcus smiled. Now we get back to work. There are hundreds of people waiting for their second chances, and we have a lot of work to do. Victoria felt her heart swell with pride and purpose. I cannot think of anything I would rather do with my life. As they left Carnegie Hall together that night,